morning on this terrific Tuesday. It's Miss Paynter here, and I have another story for you. Today we're going back to West Africa with Anansi. Remember I told you that I used to love Anansi tales when I was like 6 or 7, and I used to read them all the time. Well, I went to the griot not too long ago, and they have a bunch of Anansi stories. So I would say check out the griot if you want more Anansi stories. But today we're going to read Anansi Does the Impossible, an Ashanti Tale. So it's really a folk tale, but it's retold by Verna Aardema, I think I'm saying that right, and illustrated by Lisa Desimini. Anansi Does the Impossible. So let's see what happens in this one. So look, this book has a glossary of all these terms that show up in the book. I'm going to do my best to pronounce them correctly, but if I don't, just please forgive me. Okay. Long, long ago, when the earth was set down and the sky was lifted up, all folk tales were earned by the sky god. One day, Anansi the spider said to his wife, "Aso, it is wrong that the tales our storytellers have told for generations belong to the sky god. I'm going to buy them for our earth people." Aso said, "Do you really think you can bargain with anyone so powerful, Anansi? I fear you are taking a morsel too big to fit your mouth." "Well, we shall see," said Anansi, and the very next day he went to see the sky god. I started out all wrong already, I said. Puffing out his chest, he said, "Your Excellency, I have come to buy your stories." The sky god beat his thunder. "Ding, ding, ding, ah!" he bellowed. "What makes you think you can buy them? Kings have tried and failed, and you are not even a man." "What would you want in exchange for them?" asked Anansi. The sky god rubbed his great chin. At last he said, "The price is 3 impossible tasks. Bring me a live python, a real fairy, and 47 stinging hornets." "I can manage that," said Anansi. Then he hurried straight home to Aso. Anansi told her, "I have to pay a live python, a real fairy, and 47 stinging hornets for the stories. However, can I manage that?" Aso thought and thought. Finally, she said, "I know how to begin," and she whispered, "Pesa, pesa, pesa," in Anansi's ear. Anansi chuckled. At once he ran with Aso to a nearby river. There they sat on a log and waited. Presently, a python came slithering wasu, 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 down the water to drink. Anansi said in a loud voice, "It is longer than he is." "Not longer," shouted Aso. "Maybe just as long, but not longer." The big snake raised his head. "What are you two arguing about?" he said. "I say the log we're sitting on is longer than you," Then you are, Anansi answered. But my wife says it is not, hissed the python. This small thing, I know I am a longer. I feel longer. Wow, said Anansi, you look shorter to me. I'll show you, said the python. He lay down on the log, putting his nose even with one end of it. Your tail is too short, said Anansi, and gave the tail a pull. Now my nose is too short, cried the python, and he wriggled back to the end of the log. I know what to do, said Aso. Tie his tail to the other end. Then he can make himself longer. Anansi took a long bush rope and began winding it around the snake's tail and the log. Ka-boom, ka-boom, ka-boom. The python tried to make himself longer. He stretched and stretched, grunting. Meanwhile, Anansi kept winding until he wound the rope all the way up to the python's head. When he had the snake tied tight, he cried, You foolish python, you let me catch you. Now I'm going to take you to the sky god. And off he went, dragging the python behind him. When Anansi gave the huge snake to the sky god, his scowl darkened the sun. He said, It is true, you have brought me the python, but you have yet to bring a real fairy and 47 stinging hornets. Anansi went home to Aso and asked, How are we going to catch a fairy? Aso thought and thought. Finally she said, I know how. And she whispered, Pesa, 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 to Anansi. Anansi laughed, tweet, tweet, tweet. As Aso had suggested, he carved a wooden fairy and covered it with sticky gum from a mimosa tree. Aso put a tiny dish of banana fufu into its hand. When the moon was bright, Anansi took the make-believe fairy to the odum tree where the fairies liked to play. He tied a long string to the wooden fairy's back and another to its head. Then, clutching the ends of the strings, he hid behind some bushes. Presently, some fairies came tripping to the odum tree. They danced around it, blip, 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 and one of them cried in a tinkling voice, Look, here is a stranger. She has a dish of fufu. The fairy sister smacked her small lips. Puh, puh, puh. Ask her to give us some, she said. So the first fairy asked, Kind stranger, may I please have a taste of your fufu? Anansi pulled one string and the doll nodded its head. The fairy took a tiny taste. Ooh, she said, your fufu is delicious. Thank you. The wooden fairy said nothing. Look, said the first fairy, I told her thank you, yet she doesn't answer me. Slap her spanking place, said the sister. I almost forgot to show you the pictures. The first fairy hit hard. Pop! Her hand stuck. Let me go, let me go, she cried. The sister said, hit her again, that will teach her to let you go. The first fairy struck the doll with her other hand. Pop! And that stuck too. Quickly, Anansi pulled the strings. Now the doll with the fairy attached came bumping over to him. Goodbye, goodbye, goodbye. The little fairy screamed, "Ee!" in her eerie little voice as she was being dragged away, and her sister shrieked, "Ee! Ee! Ee!" as they ran after her. Anansi soon outran those other fairies. Then he said to the one he had caught, "Little fairy, I'm going to take you to the sky god." And he did. When the sky god saw Anansi coming with the fairy, he roared, "How can a measly creature like you perform these impossible tasks?" But then he added, "I admit that the python and the fairy are here. Still, you have not brought me the 47 hornets." Anansi ran home to Aso and asked, "How are we going to catch 47 hornets?" Aso thought and thought. Finally, she said, "I know how," and she whispered, "Pesa, pesa, pesa," to Anansi. Anansi laughed, "Hee, hee, hee." As Aso suggested, he plucked a bottle-shaped gourd from a calabash tree, whittled a wooden cork for it, and filled it with water from the river. Next, he found a hornet's nest in a bush. Climbing high up a nearby tree, he tipped the bottle and let the water gurgle, 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 down upon the hornets. "My brothers," called Anansi, "do you want a better shelter? See, in this calabash. You will be safe and dry." He held out the empty gourd. The hornets buzzed around it. One flew in, then another and another. When Anansi had counted 47 of them, he popped the stopper in. "Cop! Little hornets," he said, "I'm going to take you to the sky god." And off he went. The sky god saw Anansi coming. At once he flashed his lightning, wee, 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 and beat his thunder. Boom, boom, boom. Holding out the buzzing gourd, Anansi said, "In here are the 47 stinging hornets. Do you want to count them?" "No!" cried the sky god. He threw up his hands in resignation and said, "Anansi, you have paid the price. The live python, the real fairy, and the 47 stinging hornets are mine. From now on, the stories belong to you." Anansi thanked the sky god. Then he hurried home. That night, the people of the village gathered inside a circle of fires for storytelling, and Anansi told how he and Aso had managed to buy the sky god stories. The people rejoiced, chanting, "Honor to Anansi! Honor to Aso! Honor to Anansi and Aso!" And from that day to this, the folk stories of West Africa have been called Anansi Tales. And that's the end of the story. I hope you like that one. I do. So have a wonderful day. Be safe. Be kind to one another. And I will see you in this space tomorrow for more Reading with Miss Paynter. Bye-bye, everyone.